when 15 6-inch naval rifles can fire so fast that enemy officers refuse to believe what they're witnessing, when American gunnery crews turn their cruiser into something the Japanese call a machine gun, because no human-operated weapon should be capable of that rate of fire, when a single warship puts out more shells in 1 hour than entire squadrons fire in a full day of combat. That's not exaggeration. That's not propaganda. That's what happened when USS Helena entered the nighttime waters around Guadalcanal in 1942. Japanese naval intelligence officers are staring at battle reports flooding in from the Solomon Islands, and they can't make sense of what they're reading. Multiple ship captains, experienced combat veterans who've survived encounters with American forces, are all reporting the same impossible phenomenon. An American light cruiser, they claim, unleashed a continuous wall of fire. Her muzzle flashes created an almost solid line of light along her entire deck length. Several Imperial Navy warships now rest on the ocean floor, torn apart by this fire-spitting beast. The estimates coming in suggest this vessel blasted over 1,500 shells in less than 60 minutes. The intelligence officers exchange worried glances across the briefing table. This is impossible. No naval guns can be reloaded, aimed, and fired that quickly. The fastest rate their own highly trained crews have ever achieved is barely half that speed. But the reports keep coming in. Different battles, different ships, same terrifying result. The Americans must have developed something revolutionary. A naval machine gun firing 6-inch shells, or perhaps something even more deadly that their intelligence network hasn't discovered yet. Here's what they don't understand. The Americans didn't invent a machine gun. They built USS Helena, commissioned her with 15 6-inch rifles arranged in 5 triple turrets, and then trained her crew to a level of precision that transformed those conventional naval guns into the most devastating rapid-fire weapon system the Pacific War would ever see. And when I say devastating, I'm talking about a ship that would fire more rounds in combat than any vessel in United States Navy history. This is the story of the machine gun cruiser and how American training, technology, and determination created a nightmare that Japanese commanders learned to fear. Stay with me, because what this ship accomplished in the darkness of the Solomon Islands is absolutely insane. Before we dive into the explosive details of what happened when Helena's guns turned night into day, I need to ask you something. What city are you watching this video from right now? Are you in New York? Maybe you're in Los Angeles. Could be you're in Chicago, Miami, or somewhere completely different that I'd never guess. Drop your city in the comments down below, because I genuinely want to know who's watching this story and where you're from. And hey, while you're down in the comments, smash that like button if this story about American naval firepower is getting you fired up. Show YouTube you want more military history content like this. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, what are you waiting for? We've got incredible stories coming out all the time. Stories about American military power, stories about epic battles, stories that will absolutely blow your minds. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. Let's get back to this story, because what Helena did in the darkness was absolutely insane. The story begins in December 1936 at the New York Naval Shipyard, where USS Helena is laid down as the 9th and final member of the Brooklyn-class light cruisers. Now, you need to understand the strategic thinking behind this design, because it's brilliant. The 1930 London Naval Treaty had restricted cruiser armament, limiting the use of 8-inch guns and capping displacement at 10,000 tons. Most naval architects saw this as a problem. American designers saw it as an opportunity. Lower weight means faster speed, and instead of mounting 8 8-inch guns, they decided to build cruisers armed with 12 6-inch rifles. The theory was simple but revolutionary. Rapid-fire 6-inch guns could potentially deliver more effective firepower than slower-firing 8-inch weapons. But across the Pacific, the Japanese were already working on their latest cruiser class, the Mogami design, and intelligence reports suggested they would mount not 12, but 15 6-inch guns. With tensions already rising between the two nations, the United States refused to be outgunned by its rival. The Brooklyn class would be modified to match Japanese firepower. When the 607-foot Helena was commissioned in September 1939, she carried 15 6-inch guns spread across 5 triple turrets, 3 forward, 2 aft. The staggered, super-firing layout gave her overlapping arcs of fire, meaning she could throw a storm of 130-pound armor-piercing shells 15 miles in almost any direction. And here's where American training doctrine made all the difference. Each gun could fire 10 rounds per minute under ideal conditions, but Helena's gunnery officers pushed their crews beyond standard expectations. Her gunners trained relentlessly, developing loading techniques that transformed her gun decks into a precision factory of destruction. Each turret crew worked with stopwatch efficiency, maintaining such a blistering rate of fire that enemy observers would later refuse to believe naval rifles could sustain such devastating output. They would eventually nickname her the machine gun cruiser, convinced she must be armed with automatic weapons, because conventional wisdom said no human crew could reload, aim, and fire that fast. Beyond her main battery, Helena mounted 8 5-inch dual-purpose guns for surface and anti-aircraft work, plus an anti-aircraft battery of 8 50-caliber machine guns. Her 4 Parsons turbines churned out 100,000 horsepower, enough to push her at 32 knots. That's faster than most destroyers. She was a greyhound with the bite of a battleship. After completing her shakedown cruise and training exercises, Helena transferred to Pearl Harbor in October 1940. For over a year, her 888-man crew conducted gunnery drills and tactical exercises in Hawaiian waters. They perfected their techniques, they reduced their reload times, they learned to maintain accuracy while firing at maximum rate. Little did they know their training was about to be tested in the most unexpected way possible. Helena's first combat action wouldn't be some carefully planned naval engagement in the open Pacific. It would be a surprise attack that would drag America into war and transform Helena into a legend. Because on December 7th, 1941, Helena was moored at Pearl Harbor's 1010 dock on Ford Island with the mine layer Oglala secured along her starboard side. And at exactly 7:57 in the morning, everything changed. Signalman First Class CA. Flood spots aircraft approaching over Ford Island at 4,000 feet altitude. Having recently served on the Asiatic station, Flood immediately recognizes those silhouettes. He alerts Ensign William W. Jones, the officer of the deck. Jones doesn't hesitate. He turns on the general alarm and passes word over the ship's announcing system. Japanese planes bombing Ford Island, man all battle stations, break out service ammunition. Within 3 minutes of the first bomb landing on Ford Island, a Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bomber streaks low over the harbor. Helena is occupying the berth normally reserved for the battleship USS Pennsylvania, which is in dry dock for maintenance. That makes Helena a prime target. The Japanese bomber crew thinks they're attacking a battleship. The Kate releases a specially modified Type 91 torpedo, 18 feet long, weighing over 2,000 pounds. The torpedo passes directly under Oglala's hull and slams into Helena's starboard side at frame 75, nearly amidships, 18 feet below the waterline. The explosion is devastating. Water and oil erupt skyward as Helena's forward engine room and boiler room flood instantly. The blast catches many crew members still racing to their battle stations. Sections of the ship plunging into complete darkness as electrical cables are severed. But Chief Water Tender Westbrook immediately springs into action, wading through chest-deep water and oil in the flooded compartments to retrieve vital boiler parts. Multiple electrical fires erupt in the plotting room as damaged circuits spark, but damage control teams extinguish them within minutes. And then Helena's guns start talking. For the next hour and 20 minutes, her gunners pour out approximately 375 rounds from the 5-inch guns, 3,000 rounds from the 1.1-inch guns, and 5,000 rounds from the 50-caliber machine guns. When magazine locks threaten to slow ammunition supply, the crew simply breaks them open with hammers. Nothing is going to stop Helena from fighting back. Meanwhile, Oglala, her hull plates loosened by the concussion from the torpedo blast, begins taking on water. 3 Helena crew members swim across to the sinking vessel to help handle her mooring lines, then swim back as the mine layer starts to capsize. Helena immediately begins sharing her ammunition reserves with other damaged ships. 25,000 rounds of 50-caliber ammunition go to the battleship California, along with belting machines and thousands of spare belting links. Her crew even provides ammunition to gun positions on nearby buildings in the Navy Yard, transforming Helena into an ammunition depot as well as a fighting ship. Helena's anti-aircraft fire is so intense that several Japanese bomber formations break off their attacks rather than face her barrage. She's officially credited with shooting down 6 enemy aircraft. That's more than any other ship at Pearl Harbor, except the battleships. Think about that for a moment. Helena is a light cruiser with a massive torpedo hole in her side, flooding in 2 major compartments, and she still manages to shoot down more enemy aircraft than almost any other vessel in the harbor. The cost is heavy. 26 men lose their lives in the initial torpedo blast, with 5 more later succumbing to their wounds. Oglala is lost, flooding and capsizing at the dock. But Helena survives, and she's proven something crucial. Rapid, accurate gunfire can turn the tide, even in the face of a surprise attack, even when you're caught with your pants down at dock on a Sunday morning, even when a torpedo tears your guts out. American determination and training make all the difference. 2 days after Pearl Harbor, Helena moves into dry dock number 2 for emergency repairs. Steel plates are welded over the massive torpedo hole. On December 31st, she's refloated. But the Navy has bigger plans than simply patching her up and sending her back to sea. Helena arrives at Mare Island Naval Shipyard near San Francisco on January 13, 1942, where she receives the most advanced radar systems the United States Navy has ever deployed: SG Surface Search Radar, SC Air Search Radar, and the revolutionary FC and FD fire control radar sets that can guide her guns without any visual point of aim. Let that sink in for a moment. Helena can now sink enemy ships in complete darkness. She doesn't need star shells. She doesn't need searchlights. She doesn't need to see her target at all. Her radar tells her exactly where the enemy is, and her guns do the rest. Helena is now a prototype for the future of naval warfare. By October 1942, Helena is back in the South Pacific as part of Task Force 64, escorting supply convoys to Marines fighting on Guadalcanal. The Japanese control the waters around the island at night, conducting high-speed supply and reinforcement runs known as the Tokyo Express. On October 11th, American reconnaissance detects a Japanese force moving south. Rear Admiral Aritomo Goto's 3 heavy cruisers and 2 destroyers, heading to bombard Henderson Field, the American-held airbase. Rear Admiral Norman Scott's task force moves to intercept. 4 cruisers, including Helena, and 5 destroyers, steaming in single file through the darkness. By sheer luck, Scott's course change puts his ships in the classic crossing the T position, the most advantageous formation in naval warfare. But his flagship USS San Francisco lacks Helena's advanced radar. At 11:25 p.m., Helena's radar operators pick up the approaching Japanese squadron at 27,700 yards. That's over 13 nautical miles away. As the range closes, Helena's crew tracks every movement of the enemy force, while Scott's flagship remains blind to the approaching danger. By 11:45 p.m., the Japanese ships are only 5,000 yards away. close enough for Helena's lookouts to see their hulls through the darkness. Captain Gilbert Hoover requests permission to open fire using the standard procedure. Interrogatory Roger, meaning, "Are we clear to act?" Scott replies, "Roger," intending only to acknowledge the message. But Hoover interprets this as permission to engage. At 11:46 p.m., Helena's 15 6-inch guns erupt in a blinding salvo, followed immediately by star shells from her 5-inch batteries. The Japanese are caught completely by surprise. Helena quickly shifts her fire between targets as the general battle erupts around them. And here's where Helena's advantages become absolutely devastating. Although her searchlight platform gets wiped out in the first few minutes of battle, this actually works to her advantage. Whenever any ship turns on searchlights, everybody shoots at her. Since Helena's searchlight platform is destroyed early, she's not tempted to use them. Instead, Helena relies on her revolutionary fire control radar. While other ships need star shells or searchlights to illuminate targets, making themselves perfect targets in return, Helena engages the enemy with accuracy in complete darkness. No visual point of aim needed to lay her guns. Her rapid-fire batteries find the heavy cruiser Furutaka, which is soon ablaze and sinking. The gunners then target the destroyer Fubuki, sending her to the bottom as well. They also play a key role in crippling Admiral Goto's flagship Aoba. The victory at Cape Esperance provides a crucial morale boost for the US Navy after the disaster at Savo Island 2 months earlier. More importantly, it proves that American technological innovation, radar-directed attacks combined with Helena's devastating rate of fire, can triumph over Japanese night-fighting expertise. 1 month later, on the night of November 12th, the Japanese launch an even more ambitious attempt to retake Henderson Field. Vice Admiral Hiroaki Abe's bombardment force includes 2 fast battleships, Haiei and Kirishima, loaded with special fragmentation shells designed to destroy the airfield and every aircraft on it. Standing in their way is Rear Admiral Daniel Callahan's hastily assembled task force, but Callahan makes a crucial error. Despite having 5 ships equipped with the revolutionary SG radar, he chooses USS San Francisco as his flagship, which lacks the advanced radar systems that could give him a clear picture of the tactical situation. Meanwhile, he places Helena in the rear of the formation. At 1:24 a.m. on November 13th, Helena's radar operators detect the approaching Japanese force at a range of 27,100 yards, over 13 nautical miles away. As the enemy ships close the distance, Helena continues tracking their every movement, but San Francisco's older radar systems can't detect them at such long range. Callahan remains unaware that a Japanese fleet is bearing down on his formation. William Jones recalled later, "The Japanese came down in 3 columns, and we went between 2 of them. Once again, the fighting started at point-blank range because no ship knew where the hell they were, except the Helena." In the confused melee that follows, Helena initially engages the destroyer Akatsuki, disabling her searchlight before the Japanese vessel explodes and sinks under concentrated fire from multiple American ships. Helena then turns to engage the destroyer Amatsukaze, scoring several hits before being forced to check fire when San Francisco passes between them. Next come the destroyers Asagumo, Murasame, and Samidare, with Helena hitting Murasame in a boiler room and setting Samidare on fire. As the 38-minute battle rages, Helena maneuvers among burning ships from both sides, her radar giving her a clear picture of the tactical situation while other ships fire blindly into the smoke and darkness. She emerges from the carnage relatively unscathed, having taken only 5 hits that cause negligible damage and claim the life of just 1 man. The US Navy emerges victorious from the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, but at considerable cost. Both Admiral Callahan and Admiral Scott are lost, along with hundreds of sailors. 2 light cruisers and 4 destroyers are sunk or will sink shortly after. Helena's captain, Gilbert Hoover, finds himself the senior surviving officer of the shattered American force. At 2:26 a.m., Hoover orders the surviving ships to withdraw southeast. Helena, San Francisco, Juneau, and the destroyers Sterett and O'Bannon limp away from the battlefield. However, at 11:00 a.m., as the battered formation heads for safety, the Japanese submarine I-26 fires a spread of 3 torpedoes at San Francisco. They miss their intended target, but one torpedo veers off course and strikes Juneau. The torpedo detonates Juneau's forward magazine, and William Jones, watching from Helena, describes the horrific scene. "I just happened to be standing outside, getting some air. I was looking at her and saw her blow up. I didn't see the torpedo track, but she just went up like you see pictures of an atomic bomb explosion. The explosion is so violent that a 5-inch gun mount from Juneau sails through the air and splashes into the water on the far side of Helena. Jones is blown against a bulkhead by the shockwave, though he isn't injured. As the smoke clears, lookouts on Helena's bridge scan the water for survivors, but none are immediately visible. Faced with an agonizing decision, risk his remaining ships to carry out a more thorough search for survivors or continue the withdrawal to safety, Hoover chooses to press on. Helena signals a passing B-17 bomber about the sinking, but the report is never delivered. Juneau's survivors are left floating in shark-infested waters. Following the overall American victory at Guadalcanal in early 1943, Allied forces move up the Solomon chain. Helena takes part in a series of preparatory bombardments against Japanese positions on New Georgia, her guns pounding enemy airfields and supply depots at Munda and Vila. On July 4th, now under the command of Captain Charles Cecil, Helena joins the task force escorting the amphibious assault on Rice Anchorage in Kula Gulf. At 12:26 a.m. on July 5th, she unleashes her famous guns once more, hurling over 1,000 rounds at Japanese positions before the landing force goes ashore successfully. But that afternoon brings ominous news. Japanese destroyers are racing south down the slot with 2,400 troops and supplies for the beleaguered garrison. Rear Admiral Walden Ainsworth's task force, Helena, her sisters St. Louis and Honolulu, and 4 destroyers, turns north to intercept. At 1:06 a.m. on July 6th, the Japanese destroyer Niizuki detects the approaching Americans on radar at 13 nautical miles. Rear Admiral Teruo Akiyama takes his 3 screening destroyers to observe, while the other 7 continue unloading their cargo. At 1:57 a.m., the American vessels let rip their radar-directed rapid fire. Between the 3 cruisers, they pour out nearly 1,500 shells in just 5 minutes. Helena's guns blaze continuously, creating what observers describe as liquid fire squirting from a hose. But Helena has quickly expended her supply of flashless propellant charges from the previous night's bombardment. Now firing standard smokeless powder, each salvo creates enormous muzzle flashes that light up her entire length, making her a perfect target in the darkness. The Japanese destroyers Suzukaze and Tanikaze take minor hits, but escape serious damage under a smokescreen, but not before releasing 8 torpedoes. At 2:03 a.m., just as Ainsworth orders his ships to turn right to engage a second group of Japanese destroyers, 3 of those long-lance torpedoes find their mark. The first torpedo strikes Helena 150 feet from the bow, destroying her forward turret and tearing open the hull nearly to the keel. The blast is so violent that it may have detonated a magazine. But even with her bow nearly severed, Helena's remaining guns continue firing. 2 minutes later, the second and third torpedoes strike much lower in the hull, as much as 15 feet below the waterline, smashing into her machinery spaces. The impacts break Helena's keel and flood her engine rooms, leaving her without power. Captain Cecil gives the order to abandon ship 4 minutes after the first torpedo hit. As the crew goes over the side, Helena's hull begins to buckle and break apart amidships, the center section sinking quickly while her bow and stern remain afloat temporarily. Hours later, as the other American ships regroup in the darkness, a searchlight beam sweeps across the water and illuminates something protruding from the quiet sea. The bow section of a warship, still afloat. Admiral Ainsworth orders the destroyer Radford to investigate. For long minutes, Radford's searchlight probes the wreckage while the Admiral's voice crackles impatiently over the radio. "Who is it?" "Acknowledge." The tension is palpable on the bridges of the surviving ships as they wait in the dark. Finally, after what seems an eternity, Radford's somber reply comes back. "I'm sorry to report it is 5-0. Helena's hull number, CL50, painted on her bow, confirms what everyone feared but hoped wasn't true. The machine gun cruiser is gone. Nearly 1,000 men are suddenly in the water, clinging to life rafts and debris as Helena's broken hull disappears beneath the waves. But this story isn't over yet, because what happens next proves that American determination doesn't sink with the ship. USS Helena received the Navy Unit Commendation for her actions at Cape Esperance, Guadalcanal, and Kula Gulf. Recognition of her exceptional service throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. Her combat record remained unmatched. 10,639 rounds fired in combat, more than any ship in United States Navy history. Think about that number for a moment. Over 10,000 rounds. That's why the Japanese called her the machine gun cruiser. That's why enemy commanders learned to fear her appearance on the horizon. On April 11, 2018, billionaire philanthropist Paul Allen's research vessel RV Petrel located the wreck during an expedition to find ships lost in the Solomon Islands campaign. The ship lay in two sections at a depth of 2,820 feet, her hull number 50 still clearly visible on the stern. Allen's team confirmed her identity through the distinctive features that had made her so deadly, the 5 triple turrets that had earned her that legendary nickname. A memorial now stands in Helena, Montana, commemorating both cruisers to bear the city's name. Along with the names of the lost crew members, it bears the inscription, "They are still Helena men, always will be." That's the legacy of the machine gun cruiser. American firepower, American training, American determination. Unmatched then, unmatched now.